One day after being charged with murder, Aaron Hernandez is implicated in an unsolved double homicide. Plus, Whitey Bulger's courtroom outburst, the testimony from former FBI agent John Morris that got an emotional response from the mobster. And MIT officer Sean Collier lost his life in the line of duty. Now his family is pushing for a national holiday to recognize him and all first responders. That and more now on Greater Boston. Good evening. A busy day in the crime world today as the surviving marathon bombing suspect was formally indicted. Surrounded by state and federal officials, U.S. Attorney Carmen Ortiz detailed the charges against Jahar Tsarnaev.
The indictment alleges that Dzhokhar Tsarnaev is responsible for the deaths of Crystal Marie Campbell, Lingzi Liu, Martin Richard, and Officer Sean Collier, and also for maiming, burning, and wounding scores of others.
We will get the reaction to the indictment in a few minutes from the sister of slain MIT officer Sean Collier, who is here today to promote a National First Responders Day. But first, major news in the Aaron Hernandez case. A day after his arrest for the murder of Odin Lloyd, we learned that the former Patriot is now being investigated in an unsolved double murder in Boston last year. Meanwhile, Hernandez appeared at a bail hearing this afternoon. At Bristol County Superior Court this afternoon, prosecutors said the case against Aaron Hernandez was overwhelming, including evidence linking him to the weapon that killed Odin Lloyd and to the industrial park where his body was found.
There was a shell casing found under the driver's seat of the car that the defendant was driving from Boston. His movements were tracked from Boston all the way to where the vehicle is seen going through the industrial park.
Given that, Judge Renee Dupuis asked Hernandez's attorneys why he should be the rare murder defendant to get bail.
He shouldn't get special treatment, Your Honor, because he's a celebrity. He should get special treatment because the facts that support bail in his particular case.
But in the end, the judge denied bail, saying the evidence against Hernandez was too strong.
The Commonwealth has presented a case that's circumstantial, to be sure, but very, very strong circumstantial case.
Hernandez was escorted back to jail, where he'll remain for now. And joining me is crime reporter Michele McPhee, who has been covering the Hernandez case for ABC News. Well, this just gets stranger and stranger. So at one point, the judge asked the prosecution to establish a motive, and he said he wanted to have a sidebar on that. We didn't see that happen if it did, but it's likely linked to this double murder last year on Shaman Avenue.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are some theories out there that Odin Lloyd may have had some information about that homicide and the vehicle that was used. We do know that Aaron Hernandez was spotted at the Cured nightclub on July 14th, 2012. There was some sort of altercation with a group of other men. And later that night, those other men ended up shot and killed at the corner of Shawmut and Herald Streets in Boston. Now,
and there was somebody else in the car with him that night, correct?
Yes, there was another passenger in the car. Police have been a little tight-lipped about the identity of that person, at least one person in the car with Hernandez. The investigation, I'm being told, is very active and ongoing.
Well, was it active before they picked up Aaron Hernandez in the Odin Lloyd case, or was it dead until this came forward?
I just don't think they had anybody that came forward, and I think it's abundantly clear. You can surmise from the prosecution's recounting of actual testimony that came from Hernandez's mouth the night of Lloyd's murder. When you hear a prosecutor say, Hernandez said, I can't trust anyone anymore, you can certainly theorize that someone's cooperating in this case. And if they do have somebody cooperating in this case, it would certainly seem that that person also had information on this double homicide.
Possibly the girlfriend or somebody else who was there?
Possibly the girlfriend or friends, but there's certainly some speculation that Odin Lloyd knew too much and talked too much. And I don't think it will become a surprise to many investigators if this case is ultimately linked to street-level gang violence, which would be incredibly sad, that this 23-year-old NFL star had a bright future, had just signed a contract with Puma, had another endorsement deal, an 8-month-old baby, and he's I think that investigators are going to try to prove that he was continuing this sort of thug gang life that he had entered when he was a teenager in Bristol, Connecticut.
Well, even if it's true, recounting what he said, I don't get any respect. I mean, it's so, yeah, as you say, idiotic. It's so juvenile. Teenage for a grown man with, who has a platform like the New England Patriots was in the Super Bowl this year.
And I'm hearing from my sources that it really started to sink in when he was sitting alone in that prison cell last night. Like, he went from $1 million plus mansion in North Attleboro, beautiful women around him, hanging out with the boys on last Friday night at Rumor, hanging out with the boys at Rumor, and now he is unlikely to see the outside of a jail cell. There was a joke, I guess he remarked to one of the Bristol County sheriffs, is there a weight room here? And the response was, yeah, WAIT. So I don't think his life is going to be too spectacular anymore. I know you were down at the Whitey Bulger trial today, but I don't think I've ever heard in my life a judge say what she said in court today. After she said the thing about very strong circumstantial evidence, and I know it's strong, I know it's circumstantial, but it's very strong, she said, it appears from what the prosecution has laid out that Aaron Hernandez killed Odin Lloyd in cold-blooded murder. She said it just like as if it was a fact. I don't think I've ever heard a judge make the leap from innocence to guilty before a trial. Well, when you do hear the staggering amount of evidence that was collected in this case, the police work is laudable, to say the least. They had put together a timeline for the entire weekend, and you have to think about the police work that went into that. You had to collect surveillance from all over the state. You had to get people to cooperate with giving up that surveillance. You had to take the surveillance from his damaged security system. You remember, somebody deliberately damaged his own security system, which he had just had installed, 14 cameras in and around that mansion. So they had to find a way to lift the forensics from the damaged equipment. They
must have been recording stuff the whole time.
Right. Exactly. These security cameras were everywhere recording stuff, but there was 6 to 8 hours that were missing they had to recreate in a lab. So the idea that the police were able to put together this case in such a short amount of time, to the point where they are going to be able to retrieve DNA evidence from a piece of Bubblicious gum.
I know, stuck under the seat.
Stuck under the seat, but they had to fish it out of a dumpster.
That's amazing, because the woman who cleaned out the car, first of all, how dumb is she? She throws out a shell casing. And she pulled the gum out from underneath the seat, but she threw them both away.
So now you have to think of these cops and digging through the dumpster for a piece of chewed Bubblicious. I mean, it's extraordinary the amount of evidence that they've been able to collect.
So what's the theory on the gun? Because they did find 2 other guns in his home that he had pictures of, and so we don't know when those pictures were taken, but he's shown brandishing guns in some kind of a photo that's available. But there were shell casings. There were shell casings on the ground next to the body.
Does that make sense to you, Emily? Here's a guy who allegedly smashed his camera. I mean, we know he's damaged the surveillance system. We know he handed his phone over to cops in pieces, or his lawyers did. Yet he leaves the illegal assault rifle in the .22 caliber shell casings, which just happened to match the shell casings that were found at the murder scene. He leaves those all over the house, but he smashes his phone. I mean, it doesn't exactly suggest he's a criminal mastermind.
One thing for sure, he was awake a long time. So by the time he committed the murder, if he did, his judgment had to be severely impaired, because he had been waiting in his home for those people to show up, and he kept texting them saying, get your you-know-what up here. Right. He said that a couple times. But it appeared, though, he had planned the whole thing out, because he waited for his friends to arrive. The friends go and pick up Odin Lloyd with him. By the way, were those 2 guys in the car?
There were 2 other individuals in the vehicle when he went and picked up Mr. Lloyd.
And were they there when he got shot?
Yes, they were. I mean, my sources are telling me that it was more of an order to execute, like he was a mob boss. And the quote I got from one source is, "This Aaron Hernandez thinks he's Tony Montana from Scarface."
Yeah.
So you just have to imagine. I mean, I think his judgment went away long before he started to party on Friday night, because this is a guy who had the world at his feet. He had a brand new infant daughter. He was living the life, and he still wanted to engage in that sort of criminal behavior. I mean, remember, we forgot all about the guy that lost his eye.
Yeah, he blew away some guy in Florida in February, some some altercation. And
does it seem ironic that it was like a strip club in an industrial park in that shooting as well?
Yeah, I mean, you're hanging around in these places. I mean, there's nothing that's going to come, nothing good is going to come of it.
Well, and it's also, now when you look at the timeline, and we know that, police did visit Desire Strip Club in Providence, it appears, if you put together this timeline, that Hernandez and the other two people in this case went to Desire Strip Club after Odin Lloyd was executed in cold blood. After he was executed in cold blood. It's really...
And what time did they actually arrive home that morning? We don't know.
We don't know. But we do know that they picked up Mr. Lloyd at roughly 2:30 a.m. A witness that was working the overnight shift heard the gunshots.
Around 3:30.
Around 3:30. And then they were spotted at the strip joint.
Wow. It's crazy. But as you say, he's not going to be seeing the outside probably ever again.
Probably ever again.
All right, Michele McPhee, great reporting on this. You've been way ahead on the story.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks for coming.